Welcome to Leave It Better. My dad says every person we meet leaves a mark on our lives, and every choice we make can leave a mark on the world. This is a space for hope, for love, and for stories that remind us we are all connected. So take a deep breath and let's leave it better together.
Hey everyone, my name is Dwayne Daniels. This is the Leave It Better podcast, and I have a great guest today. Let me give you an introduction. Today's guest is someone I deeply respect, not only for the work she does, but for the way she shows up in the world. Aysha Schomburg is the president and CEO of Healing New York, an organization dedicated to supporting and protecting children and families through advocacy, intervention, and healing-centered services. Aysha leads with strength, compassion, and grace. She is always expanding the room for others, reminding people that they belong in spaces they may have once doubted. Today, we're going to talk about leadership, service, and what it really means to leave people and communities better than we found them. Welcome, Aysha Schomburg.
Thank you so much, Dwayne. Happy to be here.
Thank you for being here. And I want to just kind of tell people how I met you so people have a little bit of background. We happen to do IT support for her company, Healing New York. That's they just actually changed your name, and she can go into that in a little bit. But I was in the vicinity of their offices, and I said, you know what? I know they just have a new CEO and president. Let me see if I can stop by if she's available. And I did, and she graciously made some time for me. And I walked into the room. To my surprise, it was a strong, beautiful Black woman in the lead. Let me tell you why this was important for me. One, I know women in that position, number one, it's not as high as it should be. Two, a Black woman in this position is even less when we talk to the numbers. So seeing her in that position brought a big joy to my heart inside. So inside I was dancing, outside I was professional. And then to get to know who she is made it even better. Like I mentioned in the opening, she makes you feel like you belong in every room. And she reminds me all the time that, Dwayne, you do belong in these rooms. You do belong talking to these people. So I first wanted to tell people how we met. And then also I wanted to thank you for always showing up for me.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for those wonderful words.
So Aysha, when you think about the phrase expanding the room, what does that mean to you personally? And when I say expanding the room, I'm thinking more of people like us who have always strived to be in rooms that we felt we belonged in.
I think, first of all, I think people had to expand the room for me, right? You know, there's this conversation about mentors versus sponsors and what a mentor made you and how a sponsor, right, that next level will open doors for you,
Yep.
the Roy. And I've had the benefit, right, of having great sponsors who have opened doors for me, who have spoken my name in rooms that I've not been present in. You hear about that often. And so now, especially when it comes to, Black and brown folks, when I get in a room, and not everybody wants to be in
Right.
and not everyone needs to be in every room, right? But for those rooms where, there's been an access problem, particularly for Black folks, and I somehow have access to that or I find myself there, I feel like it's my responsibility and it's my honor, frankly, to, if the door is cracked enough for me to get through,
Mhm.
then once I get on the other side to open it a little wider so that other folks can also be in that room. I mean, that just kind of comes with I feel like historically, that's what Black people have always been doing for each
Right.
other. If you think about, whether it's the civil rights era or, the Harlem Renaissance or even prior to that, right? Black people helping each other off of, plantations and trying to,
Mhm.
right? So that's opening up a door. And so of course I walk with that honor. To be able to do that whenever whenever I can.
It's great. And you did that for me personally. And that's something for me that I will personally, obviously never forget. And because I've always said, like, prior to the name change, I'd always wanted to go to that event. It was always super pricey, right? So I was like, but for good reason. I want people to understand it's donations for things that are super, super necessary. But I just was like, yeah, not going to be in that room, right? But then Asia did make that possible for me. So I really do appreciate that.
Well, I mean, you and I talked about this privately when, you belong there, right? And so, you are a part of our support system for Healing New York, a very important part. Um, and, and so it just made sense for you to be there. And in fact, I often for that particular event, I invest in it too. I have to have skin in the game. I can't ask other people to donate when I haven't done that. So when I donate, and give yes to Healing New York, to my own organization, because I believe so much in the cause. And then I have seats at a table, literally, right?
Yep. Yep.
And I
Literally.
want to make sure that, there's, a diversified crowd, and also that we are, using that as an opportunity to say thank you to our partners like you.
Yes, thank you. And that was very, very nice to see too. I think you guys had thanked the building owner or the person that does that
Our landlord.
landlord, right? Yes. And I was just like, I've never seen this before, right? And I thought that was such a show of just of love and appreciation for the small things, right? That well, not I won't even say the small things because we kind of look at them as small things, but it's just space that you're in every day, right? 5 days a week, sometimes maybe six. And to see that just told me a lot about. I already knew who you were, right? But it told me a lot more about who you are and how you show up for people.
Well, thank you. And our landlord is, I mean, we do pay rent. He mentioned that,
Yes, he did.
but he
It's
also
not
gives.
free.
He gives. Supports our cause.
Uh-huh.
He can be supported with additional space. He's a donor also to the organization. So, it just made sense.
No, it was really great to see. So with Healing New York, can you talk about more about those services and what you're able to do
Oh, I'd
for
be happy
families
to.
and children?
Yeah. Healing New York, we just changed our name in January. So really just only like less than 2 months ago now. We were formerly the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. And we are 150 years old, the first child protection agency in the nation. We were incorporated in 1875. And, our founder, B. Gary, was the general counsel for the ASPCA, the
Mm,
American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. And as the story goes, she was basically a missionary, a social worker in the tenement housing, and some neighbors had told her about a child who was being abused. They could hear the child screaming, and this child, we now know her name was Mary Ellen, and so the social worker at a Wheeler wanted to help this child. So she went to the ASPCA because there was no place that
uh,
she could go to for abused children. And she basically was like, well, you all, help abused animals. Would you help an abused child? And so the general counsel, Ebhard Gary, he got together with some of his friends and created the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. That's
mm,
why our former name sounded so much like the
like
ASPCA.
ASPC.
And it went on and on. The thing is, what we would hear from parents is that, right now what we focus on is really, and in those days when it opened, I was an orphanage. They would
Mhm.
rescue children and children would come and stay there. And that's not what we do anymore. We do trauma recovery, so mental health therapy for children, youth, and young adults ages 5 to 21. Therapeutic supervised visitation. So that's when there's a court order that a therapist be present for visitation for parents who are co-parenting. And I like to think of that as like bringing parents together. And we have a training institute, sexual abuse prevention training in schools. A lot of people don't know that New York has Aaron's Law, and Aaron's Law requires that schools provide sexual abuse prevention training. So we're one of very few organizations that actually goes into schools and does this. And so we train small kids through our Safe Touches. And we also, train parents and teachers as well as around how to talk about body boundary, the safety, sexual abuse prevention. And then of course, like there's this online predator aspect where
Yes.
predator can be in your house through your child's computer or iPad. And so just helping parents understand what some of the dangers are and how to protect against that. And we recently also launched our a family healing center
Mm,
because we want to be able to support parents as well. If parents are not okay, their children are not okay. And this is what
yes.
we want people to understand. So I say that to say that when we would talk to parents, we were New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. And if you get a piece of paper and it says, here, go to the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children to get help, parents were raising questions like cruelty. Those words,
Cruelty, right? Wait,
well,
whoa.
I'm not cruel to my child, or
Right, right.
what are you preventing against? And so, like, we had a lot of explaining to do because if you get that piece of paper with that at the top, and now you're wondering, wait a minute, are they thinking that I'm cruel to my child?
Mm,
And so I think we also just, when I say we, pretty much all of us at the organization, my board as well, like it was an opportunity now, 150 years later, to really send the message as to what we aspire to do and where we do it mostly. And so that, we want folks to heal. So we chose the name Healing New York. Of course, this was a process that we
Mhm.
engaged in with Deloitte. Shout out to Deloitte for pro bono engagement to help us get there, and to
Love it.
choose a new logo that really focuses on highlights community, right? Because healing happens in community. So yes, we are Healing New York, but formerly New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to to Children, and changed it because it was, while we respect that history, it was outdated in terms of what it is we actually do for children and parents.
No, that's great, and I think the work is super, super important, and, I love the word healing, and I
Me too.
be very intentional. And I think obviously how you explained it, it tells me it was very intentional, right? Because yeah, when you hear cruelty and you start to think like, yeah, I am not, I'm not cruel to my kids. And the other part that I think you mentioned, which was very important, is that the parents need to heal, right? Like if they're coming from a broken place, how can you help somebody if I'm broken and I'm not at at a space where I can pour into my kids?
And not only that, though, sometimes it can be just concrete needs. If you so one of the things that we recently also launched was an emergency cash
Mm.
assistance program.
Oh,
Many thanks to our funders, Stavros Niarchos Foundation and the William Stamps Ferris Foundation. And because sometimes, explain this, because this idea of giving cash to people is still
mhm,
fairly for philanthropy. So I'm like, whoa, don't you need a service? And sometimes people
mhm.
do need services, but sometimes people just need cash. And I sometimes explain it as like, if you've never been broke before, then you're blessed.
Yes,
But if you've been broke, and especially as a broke parent, let's say of young children, and somebody helps you, somebody hands you some cash, then you also know what that feels like, right?
yes,
And I know from my previous work, that work that I was doing nationally, that we know parents do what they need to do for their children, and sometimes they need that help. And so I say that to say that when I think about the Family Healing Center and supporting parents, sometimes it's a concrete need. Particularly in New York, it could be cash, but it could also be housing. Housing is really tough in New York,
yes,
so we want to be able to support them there. There could be, other reasons sometimes, and it's true, sometimes a parent may need some of their own mental health support.
hmm,
We've also partnered with our coalition. We've developed a coalition of other organizations that do that support families from different lenses, whether it's mental health, whether it's safety from violence, housing, right? And so that we can, when parents come to see us, we have a strong network of sister organizations that are also standing by to support.
Oh, that's amazing. So I want to go into some of your leadership style, but before I even go into that, like the the bunch of the services that you talked about, I want to give you the opportunity to kind of shout out some of the people that have poured into this organization, right? And continue to pour into this organization because I think if I didn't have the opportunity to service you guys as an IT provider, I don't know if I would have known about this, right? And for me, knowing about this, then I can pass on the information to somebody that might need it. So I just want to give you opportunity to do that if you want to.
Well, of course. I mean, look, when I think about the organization and who makes it happen, those are the staff at Healing New York, right? Our clinical therapists, our security, our trainers.
Hmm.
Now we have a family support navigator. Of course, we have a really strong leadership team that come together with all sorts of skills, therapeutic skills, training skills, fundraising skills, right? That come together. And so, Healing New York doesn't exist without the people that show up to work every day to do this very important work. And I tell them all the time, right? It's the most important work in the world when you're helping children and families. And so that's how the magic happens, right?
Right.
And part of leadership is really recognizing that brilliance in other people.
Yes.
And I have the fortune to be surrounded by that at Healing New York. And then, we are, all of our services are free to families. So whether you're coming in for some mental health support, or you're coming in for TSVP because you want to be able to visit with your child during a difficult time, or you're in a New York City public school and you know that your second grade class would benefit from some sexual abuse prevention training. All that is free. And we
Wow.
do that with support of the individuals. You talked earlier about our fundraisers. Yes, they tend to be
Hmm.
expensive because it's hard to maintain this work if we don't get the help of the individuals. We've been very, very, very fortunate. of folks who have donated. And some folks donate a whole lot of
Mhm.
money. Folks donate, less, but what they can, and it all matters. It all goes. Or even our auditor said that like 78%, 78 cents on every dollar goes straight to programs,
Wow.
as opposed to like overhead. And so that money goes straight to what we are able to do. So our funders are really our individual donors, but also our foundation funders. Who consistently year after year have supported the work of Healing New York. So, you heard me mention Stavros Niarchos
Mhm.
Foundation, William Stamps Foundation, Help for Children, for example, Mother Cabrini, right? All of these people and more have been standing by our side to support. We are looking after 150 years. We are still seeking baseline city and state funding. And so, part of my job as leadership is to make sure that I'm meeting with our elected officials and saying, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's what we're doing for New Yorkers. And I'm still hopeful that the city and the state will find an opportunity to support us as well.
Yes, I hope so too. It's a very, very important mission, and
Thank
I
you.
love what you guys are doing there. So, what does it mean to you, like stepping them into a leadership role where representation, and this is why I kind of talked about that at the top of the show about seeing you, where it's limited. Like, how do you navigate it, right? Because I know it's a difficult situation, and how does it feel to be in the forefront of that?
Well, that's a good question, but a difficult one. One of the when I'm around young people, and this has happened for like the past 10 years, and as I'm in different leadership positions, well, the number one question I get is like, how do I navigate the white world?
Mm,
And you talked about rooms earlier and and I'm not quite sure I really know the answer to that. But I can tell you my parents were intentional when I went to a certain private school in Brooklyn that was beyond majority white. I think there are about
hmm
Black people in my grade. And I remember asking my parents, why they thought this was the place for me to be at that time. And one of the things that my mom said is like, you're going to do as much educating as you will be educated.
mm,
But I also remember them saying like, this is how you see how this class looks and this school looks. This is how the world is going to look.
wow.
And we want you to be able to operate within that world, to understand that world, right? The world doesn't look like it looks around our dinner table,
Mm,
right?
point
And
of
so,
importance.
yeah, and so it was, and so they were like planning that for me to make sure that I could operate and understand and not fear what the folks who at that time were the majority. So, I have confidence in myself. Part of it is being confident, having courage,
Hmm
not letting people punk you.
Right, right.
I'm look, I'm from Brooklyn. I'm from Flatbush, so you're gonna hear that come out every now and then.
That's hey, this is why we get along.
So, having that confidence, right? Going in prepared.
Yep,
Preparation is the key to confidence, right?
I
Going in
agree.
prepared,
I agree.
having confidence, and and then moving in that way, and not letting other people shrink you. And it
Mm.
doesn't matter who they are, letting anyone else shrink you, and that takes time. And I think it takes time for people to build if they're not born with it, and most of us aren't born with
No, that's true. I think confidence is a very strong point. My wife always says, one thing your kids will always never lack is some confidence. And it's because I'm always telling them, hey, my daughter and my son, my son is like, hey, you're handsome, you're beautiful, you're smart, how you show up, I'm just always pouring into them because I've always felt like once they walk out this door, they need some type of armor,
it.
right?
Yeah.
Some protection that if someone says, you're ugly. No, I ain't ugly. Oh, you ain't smart.
Mhm.
No, I am very smart. Right.
Right.
And it starts here. Right. So that's an excellent point. And I think confidence, when you don't have confidence, yeah, you can really get into a very bad space, right? You can fall into depression. There's just a lot of things that can happen if you're not confident. And the other part that you mentioned, which is an excellent point, is being prepared. I think preparation does make you confident. So even when she does good on an exam, I was like, it's because you studied. It's not just because you're smart. It's because you prepared, you did the work, and then you did well, right? So because when you don't do well, then you're like, well, I'm not smart anymore. And I'm like, no, it's not because you're not smart. Like, how well did you prepare for this test? You
Correct.
know, and that thing it's so important. So thanks for bringing that up. So was there, and this probably was like, how do you deal with the weight of it though, right? Like, I know the navigation and the confidence helps, but there's a certain weight I think that comes with being a black woman in this position, right? And how do you handle that on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I'll tell you, every day is different.
Mhm.
And for the most part, I've had help dealing with the weight. Really, first and foremost, help from my ancestors. When we talk about standing on shoulders, for me that's very real. And so I feel that. Like I feel the support of them. I feel them saying, you are here in this position for a reason, and kind of like we've got you. So yeah, there are some tough days, but I know that, this is what I'm on this earth to do.
Right.
I also, and of course, just my earthly community support, family support, friends who are like family, right? Help
Mhm.
deal with.
Mhm.
But I keep my eyes on the prize. I know why I'm here. I know what it is I want to do, and I know, they say heavy is the head that wears the crown, right?
Yes.
I just stay aligned with my purpose, allow myself to have those days when, hey, everything is not great and the weight
Mhm.
does feel heavy, because those days happen. But then I gotta be able to get back up the next day and continue to move forward with purpose.
Absolutely. And when did you know this was your purpose? Did you kind of always feel like you wanted to be of service and do these things for kids, or did it kind of just happen one day, or did you plan this out for yourself?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, when if you would have asked me in high school, even in college,
Mhm.
I was going to be a veterinarian because
Really? What? You love animals?
I love animals. My cat's sitting here
Wow.
watching the whole interview right now. He's saying, "Whoa, well, when are you going to get off?" But
Like, get off. Doing too much.
but yeah, so I wanted to be a veterinarian, and in college I majored in biology, but also sociology because I loved sociology. And I took this one course called the sociology of the family.
Mm.
And I was fascinated. I'm like, "Oh, man," because I'm from a big family, and they were just talking how families are intricate and everything else, and I just loved it. And so I decided I deferred my entry into veterinary school, and after I graduated from the University of Virginia, I worked at a law firm.
Okay.
And I was, paralegal at a law firm. About after a year of that, I said, "Oh, I know I never want to be a lawyer. Forget that."
Mhm.
These lawyers are miserable out here. But I started to think about what was next for me in going to grad school, and I said, I think I want to give back to, I've had a really great, started thinking about that family and things. I was like,
Yeah.
I've had a really great, life at that time.
Yeah.
And I wanna be able to give back to some of the young people. Maybe I have some messages to impart. That's when I went to grad school at NYU. Shout out to NYU Steinhardt.
Ah.
And as part of my graduate program, I was teaching at a school in Brooklyn that people thought was they labeled it one of the most violent schools in the country.
Mm.
And so a lot of people thought, "Oh my gosh, are you gonna be safe? Are you gonna," and I'm like, "This is what I'm gonna do." And I have to tell you that the students in my class were from all over Brooklyn and dealing with various different things. There was, young people who maybe were in foster care, young people who were taking care of their younger
Mhm.
siblings, right? But these young people were so good to me. And
Mm.
so with all this label of them being the most violent and all
Mhm.
that, they would meet me at my car in the morning, carry my tote bags, my stuff to the classroom. When, at the end of the day, they wanted to talk, they would walk me to my car, right? And I told people, I said, these young people would protect me before they would ever
Yeah.
harm, right? They were not dangerous, and I don't know who decided that these
Mhm.
were dangerous, but they were not dangerous. And so then I fell in love with young people in that experience, and so was probably the start of it.
Mhm.
And eventually, I began to work in child welfare because I remember, and I've told this story before. I was working at this, nonprofit organization that was working with young Black and brown children who were very smart and going to independent schools as well, and really like on this great trajectory, but I got this opportunity to work in child welfare at New York City Children's Services, and that was back in 2000. And I was like, "Mom, should I go? What
Mhm.
should I do?" And she said, "Go where you needed most."
Mm.
And so I went, and that was my first job on child welfare, and I was, you know, director of foster parent recruitment at that time, and I went to be director of the Office of Youth Development, so young people who were aging out of foster care. And it was there that I really had this another opportunity to like engage with young people in real time. We were annexed, our office was annexed from the main building and it had less security. Like, you could just go up in the elevator and we were on the 21st floor. But it turned out to be a good thing because, sometimes I would come out of a meeting and come to my office and be a young person would be sitting there and
Oh,
would need to talk or
yeah.
have a need and everything else. I love that even though people felt like it was not safe, I love that young people just had that access and could come
Yeah.
in. And one particular young person who I guess I, unofficially mentored, who had a juvenile justice history, I would be talking to her and talking to her. And it was because of our conversations that I decided to go to law school at night. So I was
Wow.
director of youth development during the day, and then I went to law school at night because I wanted to. She had these particular questions, and I was like, if I was a lawyer, I'd be able to answer them, but I can't. And so I went. I ended up going to New York Law School, the evening program, and I wrote my entry level essay on true justice for juveniles because mm, I felt at that time, and I add that we weren't giving young people a second chance. Like
Mm.
she was trying to she d her offense was not something that harmed a person, and so she was trying to get a job, trying to go back to school, but this incident just kept coming up. And so, we say we're a society of second chances, but, I just feel like for young people, we need to really walk that talk a lot better. But young people changed my life, so that conversation really changed the trajectory of my life. I became a lawyer because of a conversation that I had with young people. So all that, that love that I had for them and I think that they had for me, right? Sometimes I say to people, "Well, I don't know that I chose young people as much as they chose me."
I
Yeah.
love that, and I think it's because you're accessible, right? And in a way that is loving, right? So when you're not getting something like that at home, whether it's school, whatever it's at, and then you have somebody that actually wants to listen, right? That you have access to, and is not judging you. They just want to hear your story and how they can help. That changes someone's life, And I think you being accessible like that, it's really like you said, they chose you, and I think you chose them in a weird way because it was just so natural for you to be who you are, right? And thankful for. I'm just glad there's people like you out there, because there's so many young people that are struggling, and I think at least now we're in a space where we can talk about mental health or how people are feeling. There's more access than ever for young people to talk to other people. But I think that the key component in it is love, right? Like you said, I think that part right there, to feel loved and to feel seen, are two of the things that I think help young people more than anything else.
Thank you for bringing that up. L love is central to the work that I do. And, when I remember when I was working, for the Biden administration, and I told my executive team that, when we were doing sort of something like you would think of like as a mission statement
Mhm.
or, as a statement of priorities, and I used this word love, and they were like a couple of folks were like, "Oh my god, that's not professional."
Wait.
Right. And I said, "Oh, no, that's the most professional word."
Yes.
The most
Yes.
professional word in terms of what it is we do, so I'm happy to hear you talk about that because that is also how I approach every day. I People
Mhm.
say, "How do I get up every day and do this work?" This is not work for me, right? I get up because, for the love of it.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I think when you get to the point where it doesn't feel like work, even though there's some days that tougher than others, obviously, like you said, but that's a good feeling. And that has that really kind of shaped your leadership style as well, just kind of leading with love?
I try to, and and every now and then it's so funny because this week I've gotten some really great messages from people. I got a message from a woman who I worked with 20 years ago. Obviously,
Wow.
she was just talking about, a a conversation that I had with her about having options, and then
Mhm.
recently she was, having a little stuck at work, and so I tried to help her get unstuck, and she was very grateful for that. So yes, I try to lead with love. I try to, and I think I'm doing it only because when people are reaching back out to me and saying, thank you for your loving leadership,
Mhm.
then I think that the message has, gotten across.
No, absolutely. It's definitely has come across to me, and getting to know you even more. And plus, you're down to earth, right? You're at this certain level in your career, in your life, which you deserve, and you worked hard to get here. But you're also just a cool person to be around, right? So, sometimes people get to this space and they become this other person, and it's just like, well, I know you from Brooklyn. What?
Yeah, exactly.
So you are still at your core, like you said, a Brooklyn girl when you need to be, but you just show up in just the right ways. So I'm just
Well,
thankful
thank
to get
you.
to know you.
Yeah, and listen, my family, they're gonna let me get too high.
You
You
know,
know,
you know
too
the
high for a
always
horse. You know what I mean? And be like, girl.
girl, we know. But that's good because and that's kind of what I was gonna actually ask you that too. Like, how do you keep yourself grounded, right? Because you've had so many great accomplishments in your career, right? Like you kind of glossed over working for the Biden administration, like that, right? But that's another conversation. But how do you keep yourself grounded? And I would say probably family, but is there anything else that helps you
Well,
stay the course?
I'm only human. My mom used to say the same people you see on your way up, you see on your way down.
That's a fact.
And part of how I was raised was, I remember when I was first, I may have been just graduated from college. My mom said, when you go to the office and you see the secretary or whoever or person who opens the door for you, she said, you be kind to everybody.
Yes.
You'd be good to everybody. The person who's mopping the floor, the person who's you be kind to everybody. Everybody is a human being, and that was kind of how she wanted me to live my life and to
Mhm.
remember. And so humility comes easy when you realize that hey, they strip all these degrees and strip this, the jobs and everything else, and I am just a person, and that's who we all are. We're all human beings. Um, humility, there's strength and there's confidence, but I try to stay humble because
Yes.
I know, another thing my mother used to say, there but for the grace of God go I, right? That
Mhm.
all of
Mhm.
all of these gifts are gifts from God. So
Indeed. Indeed.
and so when walking in my purpose and continuing to do this work, I know that without it all, I'm like anyone else walking the earth, and so I just keep that in mind.
No, that's beautiful. And your mom hit it on the head, right? I'm the same way. Like no matter who it is I'm talking to, it's always good morning, hi sir. Like even I told you I interviewed Tony Porter. The first thing I asked him was like, "Do you want me to call you Mr. Porter?" Right? Like it's just certain things that I was brought up in a certain way, and I think sometimes we forget the small things of just like the thank you, you're welcome, have a
Yeah,
good day, open the door, and those things are lost arts. So I practice that with my kids. My son does not get anything without asking correctly. He does not, unless he acknowledges that, a thank you or a welcome. I remind them, did you say thank you? Or what did you, oh, well, welcome. You're welcome, daddy. Whatever, like it's those small things that you build at home that hopefully your kids carry out,
right.
and then they can
And
hopefully,
thank you is very important. I mean, I sit down, 2 or 3 times a year, and I just do thank you notes, especially to people who have done something kind for our organization or who I've had a kind exchange with. My parents taught me early on, here, not only just don't only say it, but you're gonna send this person a note.
I love it.
Right? And so I'm kind of old school where I sit down, myself will be like, they'll stack the thank you notes and they know I'm gonna be in there, with this opportunity to thank people and not in a cursory way, but it also reminds me like, "Ooh, this person has done that. I think I sent you a note."
Yes, you absolutely did. I was going to say that. I was like, oh, I got it in the mailbox. I was like, oh, I felt special.
You are special. You are
Uh,
special. So
Thank
yes,
you.
that art of saying thank you, that art of being able to apologize
Yes,
when
important lesson.
you don't always get it right.
You don't,
Yeah.
you don't. We're not perfect. We're imperfect people striving for perfection, right? I
Right.
always try to be the best version of myself. In days I fall short. And the
Yeah.
days that I do fall short, I am super accountable to say, hey, I messed this up. I can be better tomorrow. Today just wasn't a good day.
But that could be very hard for people, that self-awareness. I was in this last weekend, I was with, you know, my friend, sister, amazing person, Dr. Daria Willis, the president of Howard Community College, and we were down there, we did a tour of the college, and we went to a couple of other sort of events. We went to make some journals,
Hmm.
and the journal the store actually had just different greeting cards, and one of them said, "Oops." And so, at the end, I was buying the cars and I bought the oops one. And so the woman who owns the store, she said, "Well, what did you do?" I said, "Well, I didn't do anything yet, but I know this is going
I
to come
know.
in."
Something's gonna happen, right? I'm gonna need to use this card.
Yeah.
Oh man, I love that. The oops card. Have it in
Mhm.
reserve just so when it happens, I am ready. That is perfect. No, but this is why I think you are such a great leader, right? Because you have to be humble, right? Like you said, I think you have to be confident, and you got to be able to strip your ego from situations to either humble yourself to apologize or send the oops card, right? If you're living in a space of ego all the time, how do you do that? You
Right.
know? So
But, and also being able to apologize really takes some vulnerability, and I don't
oh
know that we
yes,
talk
that's
about
an
that
excellent
enough,
point.
right? That
Excellent point.
vulnerability and leadership, knowing I don't
Yes.
always get it right, right? But also trusting, when I talked earlier a little bit about the brilliance around me, having a team of people around me
Mhm.
who when you talk about access also means being able to say, "Asia, you know what? That was jacked up.
Yes.
But maybe you should have done it, but here's what I would have done, or think
Right.
about doing it this way, or you know what?" And so, you want people to be able to be honest with you because, as long as we're breathing, we're evolving. I'm evolving too. My leadership is
Mhm.
evolving. I'm evolving as a person, as a human being. And I'm counting on the people around me to say,
Mhm.
maybe there was another way.
No, I agree, and I think having a very good circle of people, not a bunch of yes people, people exactly like you said that hold you accountable in a very healthy way. I think it allows you the space to grow, and just being like just having this conversation with you, right? And the chance that we got to meet and got to know each other has influenced me in a good way, right? And learning and how you maneuver life and how you maneuver rising up and how you show up. Because I'm always in a constant state of I want to be better. I want to learn because I have kids behind me that are looking at me and how do I react to certain situations.
They're watching.
They watch, you know what's funny, Asia? They watch so much to the point that my youngest son, and I say this on this podcast a lot because I love my kids, but like way he reacts to my wife is a direct reflection of me. Like, so he'll go over there and he'll rub her face, like he'll tell her she's beautiful. Like he does all the things, he says all the things that I say to her on a daily basis. And it reminds me that I have to continue to show up the right way, right? And for my daughter as well. So she sees how I treat my wife and how I treat them as individuals and to give them the space to have a voice.
But you are also in the way that you treat your wife, you're modeling how to treat a woman. So you're
Yes.
modeling for your son how to treat a woman that he loves. You're modeling for your daughter how she should be treated as a woman, right? And so it's very important the messages, and trust me, when you think they're not even listening, they're listening.
Like, what? It's some
Yeah.
stuff. That's something. I'm just like, wait a minute. You will
Mhm.
actually watch this, man. He's just such a character. So you've been a great person to just be around. So I'm thankful for this relationship, really am.
I'm thankful for it too.
So I know you're a busy woman. So I got about two more questions for you, and then you can take your Saturday back. Okay.
I love spending my Saturday this way. This is like very productive.
Love it, love it, and I'm glad because I know how your schedule is. You know what? Before I get to the two other questions, this is more of a personal one. How was the trip to Africa? We never
It was
talked about
great.
that.
Since we intentionally explore Africa, so we've been to
Hmm.
many countries in Africa. This time around, we went to Senegal, Cape Verde, and Morocco. And in
Nice.
Senegal, we went to the Door of No Return. As you know, there are countries in West Africa where there were these castles where the enslaved Africans were held before they were taken across the ocean here to the now United States. And so, well, we went to the Door of No Return in Dakar. We went to the African Renaissance Monument, which if you haven't, if you could Google it, but it will do it no justice to see it in person. It's
Mm,
magnificent. It is actually bronze. Is it copper? Bronze. Oh, it's bronze of a child, a man, a child, and a baby. And the
mm,
baby is representing the future, and the woman is like Mother Africa. It's huge.
wow.
Um, we went to the Museum of Black Civilizations. We went to Cape Verde. We ate good. That was Cape Verde, a lot of beach. That was great. And then we spent some time in Morocco and in Casablanca and in Marrakesh. And then we came home. We were delayed by
Snowstorm.
by the snowstorm, but we finally made it back. So it was lovely.
That's great. I'm glad you had a good time because I remember you were going. And I said, oh, I got to ask about this. Okay, that's great. I'm glad you had a really good time.
Thank you.
All right. So when you walk into a space, or a conversation, or even in like community, like what you're doing now, what does it mean to personally to you to leave it better?
Oh, wow. Oh, that means, to leave it better means to recognize um, the greatness in other people.
Mm.
Right. And to, we talked earlier about bringing, about opening up the door. And so, like, I'm not going to be here forever. So, in order for me to leave it better, I have to make sure that I'm seeing the greatness in other people, the brilliance in
Yeah,
other people, and I'm bringing them along in the room, around
yes.
wherever they want to be, and that making sure that I'm in a position to, to pass the baton.
Mhm.
So to leave it better for me is to leave it in the hands of greatness, and there's so much greatness around us, that sometimes a lot of times people get to a certain position and they're doing really great. Well, they don't want to let it go, and I get it. I
Yeah,
understand,
it's
right?
true.
Because they're great at what they do. They don't want to let it go. There's been a lot of sometimes perceived power in some of these things, whatever.
Mhm.
But leaving it better means letting it go, passing it to the to passing it on to sort of the next crew, right?
Yep.
That can bring greatness to all of the work that we do.
I love it. Yep, and I equate that to I always say, like, passing the baton, right? Like
Yeah,
you're doing a relay, and you're just like, "Hey, you gotta finish this last leg for me. I
you
can't
got
run it anymore."
yeah, or you got to finish the next leg, and then someone's
Right.
going to be after
Somebody gotta
that.
be ready, right? So
That's
you
the
gotta
only
do it.
way. Yeah, you got to keep it to keep it going.
No,
Yeah,
I agree. And that's where mentorship, is super important. And like you said, making sure you're bringing people up because like we said, we're not going to be here forever. So how do we keep those stories going, the messages going? How do we continue to help each other in a positive way and show up in the right ways? The only way we can do that is by uplifting people
that's
that we
right.
think are not, I don't want to say worthy because everyone is worthy, but I want to make sure that we're bringing up people that are promoting the right messages.
That's right. Yeah, and this is it's different people and different um you know types of work and things
Yep.
like that. And so but holding their hand and bringing
Yeah.
them along is really for me how I leave it better. What does this work look like in 40 or 50 years?
Mhm.
So it's
I
got to
love it.
rely on the people.
No, it is. It does rely on the people. What is one thing that someone can do in their daily routine, well, in life, to leave someone better? Like, what is one thing you would suggest someone to do? And it doesn't have to be anything big. Like, it could be the smallest thing. What do you suggest?
Saying something good to
Mm,
another person.
yes,
Right.
yes,
Speaking positivity. You talked about this, you do it with your children. I mentioned earlier someone who had called me that I worked with 20 years ago.
yeah. That's beautiful.
Something I said to her that she carries with her.
Wow.
And so, and by the way, negative stuff can work like that too.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
People carry it with it. But if you can speak positivity into someone, right? And if you can manage to do that every day or a couple of times a week or whenever you have this opportunity, like here's an opportunity to say something really positive, then I think that's a way to leave it better.
I love it. I think that is perfect. And I try to focus on just the 1%, just a little bit a day, And again, people think it has to be very big actions, and it does not. It's just really how do you show up in the smallest way to make a difference in this world? And I
Exactly.
think by interviewing people like you and the other guests that I got coming and the guests from past, and that people can go back and play these interviews and hear, even if it's just, if you take 1 minute from it that you liked and said, oh, wow, this was amazing. When Asia said this really hit home. I'm going to take this and run with it. That's why I'm doing this for no other reason other than that.
I love it. I love what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for leaving it better.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The other part I'm working on is accepting those kind of compliments. I was just talking to a friend of mine, and it's always, no, 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 thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you.
You
It's
gotta
like,
receive it because that's fuel to keep you going.
it is. It is. And I'm getting better at acknowledging that and using that to continue to go. Cause there are days, like you said, where I'm just like, man, I don't feel like creating today, right? I don't want to do
Mhm.
this. I don't want to edit. I don't want to do any of this. But then I think about, all right, well, it doesn't have to all happen in one day, right? Let me just
No.
interview, then I can piece it, and then I can put it out, right? And learning to do that because my Taurus trait is, oh, I got to do it now. Everything has to happen now. It has to happen now, 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 right? And this has been my slow down season of preparation, execution, and just making sure the product looks right.
Right. But and also giving yourself grace because I mean, I don't know that, black men, black women, we don't always give ourselves the grace to be like, you know what, I'm not doing that today.
Right, right. It ain't
Tomorrow
happening.
I'm not doing it, and that's okay. Right.
Yes, that's an important message. It
Yeah,
is. It is okay because we're always in, I think because the way a lot of us have grown up is we have to grind, right? It's grind. We have to grind, 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 grind. Every day is a grind.
every day.
Every day can't be a grind.
Mm,
There has to be rest, right?
there
So
has to
you
be
can refuel
rest,
yourself to help other people.
100%.
So,
Yeah.
well, Asia, thank you so much. We had an adventure today, right? You guys might notice that she has a different background from the beginning. We made a joke about that.
This is the real back.
Rooms and spaces, right? This is a real background.
'Cause I couldn't
But
get the effects, it wouldn't
right,
work on the computer.
right.
That's why Dwayne's gonna have some work to do when we log off. So it's really
Exactly. But we had an amazing time. It was an amazing conversation. It was everything I thought it was going to be. I want to thank you again for gracing the show. You're doing amazing work. Keep showing up the way you're showing up. I am always going to champion Black women. And you are a strong, vulnerable, and smart Black woman that is leading the way. So I hope people get to see this. And what I want you to do is tell people how can they help the organization? How can they donate? That way I can get that message across as well.
just go to healing-ny.org and you'll get to learn more about our organization. And if you would like to give, we love a cheerful giver.
Yes, yes. Good, please.
If you would like to give, you can do that through the website, and you can also find me, through that website as well. So thank you, Dwayne, for that opportunity.
No problem. Anytime. And what I'd like to say at the end of every episode, and sometimes I forget because I have to give myself grace, but today I'm going to say it. So make sure when you leave it better. Thank you so much, Asia.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Leave It Better. I'm Dwayne Daniels, and my hope is that today's conversation gave you a little more peace, a little more hope, and a reminder that how we show up still matters. If this episode spoke to you, please share it with someone who might need it. And remember, when you leave it better.